Pixies are mythical creatures of folklore, considered to be particularly concentrated in the high moorland areas around Devon and Cornwall, suggesting some Celtic origin for the belief and name. Akin to the Irish and Scottish AOC, pixies are believed to inhabit ancient underground ancestor sites such as stone circles, barrows, dolmens, ringfort menhirs. In traditional regional lore, pixies are generally benign, mischievous, short of stature and attractively childlike. They are fond of dancing and gather outdoors in huge numbers to dance or sometimes wrestle through the night, demonstrating parallels with the Cornish plen-an-gwary and Breton Fest Noz folk celebrations originating in the medieval period. In modern times they are usually depicted with pointed ears, and often wearing a green outfit and pointed hat, although traditional stories describe them wearing dirty ragged bundles of rags which they happily discard for gifts of new clothes. Sometimes their eyes are described as being pointed upwards at the temple ends. These, however, are Victorian-era conventions and not part of the older mythology. In modern use, the term can be synonymous with fairies or sprites. However, in folklore there is a traditional enmity, even war, between the two races. Etymology and origin. The origin of the name pixie is uncertain. Some have speculated that it comes from the Swedish dialectal piski, meaning wee little fairy. Others have disputed this, given there is no plausible case for Nordic dialectical survivals in southwest Britain, claiming instead, in view of the Cornish origin of the piski, that the term is more probably Celtic in origin, though no clear ancestor of the word is known. The term Pobelvian is often used to refer to them collectively. Very similar analogues exist in closely related Irish and Breton culture, although the common names are unrelated. Even within areas of language survival there is a very high degree of local variation of names. In West Penworth, the area of late survival of the Cornish language, Spriggans are distinguished from pixies by the malevolent nature. Closely associated with tin mining in Cornwall are the subterranean ancestral knockers. Pixie mythology is believed to predate Christian presence in Britain. In the Christian era they were sometimes said to be the souls of children who had died unbaptized. These children would change their appearance to pixies once the clothing was placed in clay funeral pots used in their earthly lives as toys. By 1869 some were suggesting that the name pixie was a racial remnant of Pictic tribes who used to paint and tattoo the skin blue, an attribute often given to pixies. This suggestion is still met in contemporary writing, but there is no proven connection and the etymological connection is doubtful. Some 19th-century researchers made more general claims about pixie origins, or have connected them with the puck, a mythological creature sometimes described as a fairy. The name puck is also of uncertain origin, Irish puca, Welsh puca. The earliest published version of the Three Little Pigs story is from Dartmoor in 1853 and has three little pixies in place of the pigs. In older West Country dialect, modern received pronunciation letter pairs are sometimes transposed from the older Saxon spelling, resulting in piskies, in place of modern pixies, as still commonly found in Devon and Cornwall to modern times. Until the advent of more modern fiction, pixie mythology was localized to Britain. Some have noted similarities to northern fairies, Germanic and Scandinavian elves, but pixies are distinguished from them by the myths and stories of Devon and Cornwall. Cornwall and Devon. Before the mid-19th century, pixies and fairies were taken seriously in much of Cornwall and Devon. Books devoted to the homely beliefs of the peasantry are filled with incidents of Pixie manifestations. Some locales are named for the Pixies associated with them. In Devon, near Chalcombe, a group of rocks are named for the Pixies said to dwell there. At Trevose Head in Cornwall, 600 Pixies were said to have gathered dancing and laughing in a circle that had appeared upon the turf until one of the number, named name.Akin, lost his laugh. After searching amongst the barrows of the ancient kings of Cornwall on St. Briac Downs, he wades through the bottomless Dosmery pool on Bodmin Moor until his laugh is restored by King Arthur in the form of a chart. In some areas, belief in pixies and fairies as real beings persists. In the legends associated with Dartmoor, pixies are said to disguise themselves as a bundle of rags to lure children into the play. The Pixies of Dartmoor are fond of music and dancing and for riding on Dartmoor colts. These pixies are generally said to be helpful to normal humans, sometimes helping needy widows and others with housework. They are not completely benign, however, as they have a reputation for misleading travellers. The queen of the Cornish pixies is said to be Joan the Wad, and she is considered to be good luck or bring good luck. In Devon, pixies are said to be invisibly small and harmless or friendly to man. In some of the legends and historical accounts, they are presented as having near human stature. For instance, a member of the Elford family in Tavistock, Devon, successfully hid from Cromwell's troops in a pixie house. Though the entrance has narrowed with time, the pixie house, a natural cavern on Sheep Tor, is still accessible. At Buckland Street, Mary, Somerset, pixies and fairies are said to have battled each other. Here the pixies were victorious and still visit the area, whilst the fairies are said to have left after the loss. By the early 19th century, their contact with humans had diminished. In Samuel Drew's 1824 book, Cornwall, one finds the observation, "The age of pixies, like that of chivalry, is gone." There is, perhaps, at present hardly a house they are reputed to visit. Even the fields and lanes which they formerly frequented seem to be nearly forsaken. The music is rarely heard. Pixie Day is an old tradition which takes place annually in the East Devon town of Ottery St. Mary in June. The day commemorates a legend of pixies being banished from the town to local caves known as the Pixies Parlour. The Pixie Day legend originates from the early days of Christianity, when a local bishop decided to build a church in Ottery, and commissioned a set of bells to come from Wales, and to be escorted by monks on the journey. On hearing of this, the pixies were worried, as they knew that once the bells were installed it would be the death knell of the rule over the land. So they cast a spell over the monks to redirect them from the road to Ottery to the road leading them to the cliff's edge at Sidmouth. Just as the monks were about to fall over the cliff, one of the monks stubbed his toe on a rock and said, "God bless my soul," and the spell was broken. The bells were then brought to Ottery and installed. However, the pixies' spell was not completely broken. Each year on a day in June, the pixies come out and capture the town's bell ringers and imprison them in Pixie's Parlour to be rescued by the vicar of Ottery Street, Mary. This legend is reenacted each year by the Cub and Brownie groups of Ottery Street, Mary, with a specially constructed Pixie's Parlour in the town square. Characteristics. Pixies are variously described in folklore and fiction. They are often described as ill-clothed or naked. In 1890, William Crossing noted a pixie's preference for bits of finery. Indeed, a sort of weakness for finery exists among them, and a piece of ribbon appears to be highly prized by them. Some pixies are said to steal children or to lead travelers astray. This seems to be a crossover from fairy mythology and not originally attached to pixies. In 1850, Thomas Keatley observed that much of Devon pixie mythology may have originated from fairy myth. Pixies are said to reward consideration and punish neglect on the part of larger humans, for which Keatley gives examples. By the presence they bring blessings to those who are fond of them. Pixies are drawn to horses, riding them for pleasure and making tangled ringlets in the manes of those horses they ride. They are great explorers, familiar with the caves of the ocean, the hidden sources of the streams and the recesses of the land. Some find pixies to have a human origin or to partake of human nature, in distinction to fairies whose mythology is traced to immaterial and malignant spirit forces. In some discussions, pixies are presented as wingless, pygmy-like creatures. However, this is probably a later accretion to the mythology. One British scholar stated his belief that pixies were evidently a smaller race, and, for the greater obscurity of the tales about them, I believe them to have been an earlier race. Literary interpretations. Many Victorian-era poets saw them as magical beings. An example is Samuel Minturn Peck. In his poem The Pixies he writes, "'Tis said the forms are tiny, yet all human ills they can subdue, or with a wand or amulet can win a maiden's heart for you. A many a blessing know to stew, to make to wedlock bride, give honor to the dainty crew. The pixies are abroad tonight." The late 19th-century English poet Nora Chesson summarized pixie mythology fairly well in a poem entitled The Pixies. She gathered all the speculations and myths into verse. She touches on all the essentials, including even more modern accretions. Pixies are in between, not cursed by God or especially blessed. They do the unexpected, they bless the land, and are forest creatures whom other wild creatures find alluring and non-threatening. They love humans, taking some for mates, and are nearly ageless. They are winged, flitting from place to place. The Pixie Day tradition in Samuel Taylor Coleridge's hometown of Ottery St Mary in East Devon was the inspiration for his poem Song of the Pixies. The Victorian-era writer Mary Elizabeth Whitcomb divided pixies into tribes according to personality and deeds. Anna Eliza of Bray suggested that pixies and fairies were distinct species. Modern fiction. Pixies serve as helpers of Santa Claus in L. Frank Baum's 1902 novel The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus and his 1904 short story I Kidnapped Santa Claus. They reside in the forest of Bursey. In Michael Buckley's The Sisters Grimm series, pixies are described as small orange glowing creatures that resemble fireflies and are controlled by fairies such as Puck by the use of a small wooden flute. Enid Blyton wrote a number of children's books with pixies as featured characters. One employee of the BBC even criticised her stories haven't much literary value. There is rather a lot of the pink winky doodle doodle dum dum type of name in the original tales. In Holly Black's and Tony Deitlitz's Spiderwick Chronicles, pixies are green-skinned, human-sized fairies with shimmering wings. They have a command of glamour and a type of power to charm or seduce others. Holly Black has also written a book called Tithe in which the main character is a pixie. In Owen Colfer's Artemis Fowl series, pixies are one of a number of magical species that have been driven underground by humans and the pollution they have caused on Earth. Opal Cowboy is the megalomaniac genius pixie of Artemis Fowl, the Opal Deception. Colfer describes characteristics of pixies as having abnormally childish features and larger heads than other types of fairies, with large but vulnerable brains. They are also prone to headaches and, particularly in the case of Opal Cowboy, violent mood swings and temper tantrums. Cowboy is the perfect example of the genius turned to madness. In Terry Pratchett's Discworld novels The Wee Free Men and A Hat Full of Sky, a race of kilt-wearing fairies, warriors named the name.Akin, call themselves Pixies. In J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets, Gilderoy Lockhart releases a cage of Cornish blue pixies into the classroom in an inept effort to teach the students how to defeat them in his defense against the dark arts class. Rowling's version of pixies are about 8 inches tall, electric blue in color, and are wildly rambunctious tricksters. In Kim Harrison's Rachel Morgan series, Rachel, a witch, works closely with Jenks, a pixie, to track down the missing, save various creatures, retrieve stolen objects, and defend the defenseless, etc. Jenks, his wife, and large family live in, tend, and protect Rachel's garden. Need, a series of novels by Carrie Jones, follows the struggle against malicious pixies in an urban fantasy setting. Several characters in the Marvel Comics universe have been called Pixie. Neil Gaiman told tales of pixies in his novel American Gods. Animation in the Disney film Peter Pan, Tinker Bell is described as a pixie, although, in the J.M. Barrie play on which the film is based, she is actually a fairy. In the Disney versions she always uses pixie dust, rather than the fairy dust in the play. In Barrie's original play, Tinker Bell is traditionally staged just as a flying point of light beamed from offstage. Disney continues to use the terms pixie and fairy interchangeably for Tinker Bell and associated spin-offs. In The Fairly Odd Parents, the pixies are recurring villains who are dull, wear grey suits, speak in monotone voices, wear pointy caps and, unlike the fairies, treat magic like a business. Instead of wands, they carry cell phones. This is due to them being named after pixels. The head pixie and the other male pixies are all voiced by Ben Stein. The female pixies are not seen. Pixies also make an appearance in the cartoon Winx Club. In this version, it seems that almost all pixies are females, and while they do use the magic as a carrier based on the talents, these pixies are more colorful, more fun-loving, and more voice-variant in spite of having the same toddler-like, high-pitched accent from the natural toy-like size. Also, the Winx Club pixies are friends with fairies. In fact, each pixie bonds at first sight with her fairy of fate and helps her any way the talent would allow, and that fairy, in turn, protects her pixie.